The voice they mocked its room was cold and too bright, like someone had turned up the lights just to make people uncomfortable. It was a press junket, one of those long, exhausting days where actors sit in the same chair while dozens of reporters rotate in and out like a never-ending carousel. Cameras clicked. Voices asked the same questions again and again. Smiles became routines. Answers felt rehearsed. Ana de Armas sat quietly beside Keanu Reeves, her fingers clasped together in her lap. Smile was soft, tired, but still warm. She was used to these days by now, but that didn't mean they were easy. Keanu leaned in gently and asked in a quiet tone, "You holding up okay?" She nodded with a small smile. "Just need a nap after this." He chuckled, and that simple, honest sound eased the tension in her shoulders for a moment. But that moment didn't last long. The next reporter stepped in. He was a man with a sharp suit and a sharper tone. He didn't smile, didn't offer a greeting. Instead, he raised his microphone and said, "Ana, your accent is still so heavy. You think it's holding you back in Hollywood? Do you even try to speak clearer English?" The room froze. Ana blinked. Silence filled the air like, oh wait. Cameras kept rolling. No one moved. The man looked down at his notepad like what he'd said was normal, like he hadn't just taken a knife and sliced. The energy in the room, Ana's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. Her hands tightened in her lap. Keanu turned his head. Slowly toward the reporter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't stand up. He didn't look angry, but something in the room shifted. His eyes, calm and steady, locked onto the man. "Do you ask American actors to change their voice so they sound less American?" Keanu asked, his voice steady. The reporter didn't reply. She speaks in her own voice, Keanu continued. And that voice has told some of the most powerful stories I've ever heard. It's not her accent you hear. It's her soul. And it's beautiful. You could hear the breath leave the room, Ana's eyes glistened. Not with sadness, with something deeper. A mixture of gratitude and disbelief that someone had stood up for her like that. Not with anger. Not with shouting, but with quiet truth. The reporter lowered his mic. Someone behind him coughed, then mumbled an apology. The next person in line hesitated, unsure whether to continue. Keanu reached over and placed his hand gently on Ana's, grounding her, and just like that, the room shifted again, this time with respect, but the weight of the moment didn't leave Ana as the day moved on. Hours later, the junket was over. They stepped outside, finally free from the artificial light and forced smiles. The sun was setting, and the sky was turning golden orange. Ana walked quietly beside Keanu. "You didn't have to say anything?" she said softly. Keanu looked at her. "Maybe, but someone should have." "I've heard things like that before," she admitted. "I thought I was getting used to it." He shook his head. "You shouldn't have to get used to being disrespected." A long pause hung between them. Ana looked at her hands. "I always feel like I'm trying to prove I belong here," she whispered. "No matter how many movies I make, or how many awards come, I still feel like someone is going to tell me I don't deserve any of it." Keanu didn't try to fix her feelings. He didn't say she was wrong. He just nodded. "I've felt that too," he said. "Not in the same way. But I've had moments where I thought maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I was just lucky. But here's the truth, Ana. We're all here for a reason. And your voice? It's one of those reasons." She looked up at him, eyes full of something unspoken, something that said thank you without needing words. Later that week, Ana was invited to a table read for a new film. A big project. The kind that could change her career again. She was excited but nervous. She sat down with the rest of the cast, a mix of famous names and fresh faces. Scripts were handed out, coffee cups steamed. The director, a well-known man with a reputation for being blunt, stood at the front. "All right," he said. "Let's begin." The reading began. One by one, actors read their lines. Jokes were made, scenes flowed, and then it was Ana's turn. She read her lines, her voice calm, careful. She knew this character. She had studied her, felt her but partway through. Someone laughed, not at the line, not at the story. At her voice. A quiet, cruel chuckle from a corner of the room. "Sorry," the voice said, a young actor trying to act cool. "It's just her accent, man. It's like James Bond meets telenovela." A few people gave awkward smiles. Anna's voice stopped. Her hands froze over the script. The director said, "It's nothing," until Keanu, who had shown up to support her, "It's not even in the film," slowly stood up from his seat in the back. He didn't look angry, but he didn't look pleased either. He walked to the center of the room. Silence fell like a blanket. "You know," Keanu said, looking at the young actor. "Once watched Anna perform a scene where she had no words. Just her eyes, just her breath. She broke everyone in the room. She didn't need a perfect accent. She needed truth. And she gave it." He turned to the director. "Is this a place for truth?" The director nodded slowly, his tone more careful now. "Yes." Keanu looked back at Anna. Double quotes, "Then let's treat it that way." Anna slowly lifted her head. She didn't say anything, but her eyes met his, and the message was clear. She wasn't alone. After the reading, as everyone left the room, the young actor, who laughed, walked past Keanu and stopped. "Sorry, man," he mumbled. "I didn't mean anything." Keanu looked at him and said quietly, "Then mean better." Anna sat on the steps outside, breathing in the cool evening air. Keanu joined her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Do you know what meant the most to me?" she asked. "What? You didn't defend me with a big speech or drama?" "Not you, just reminded them that what I had was real." He gave a soft smile. "Because it is." Anna looked out at the street below. Lights were starting to twinkle on in the city. "Maybe one day," she whispered, "they'll hear my voice, not just the accent." Keanu nodded. "They already do," he said. And in that quiet moment, the hum of the city rising around them, Anna began to believe it too. The echo that followed the next morning, Anna walked into the studio lobby with her head held higher than usual, not because she felt stronger, but because she had decided she would not shrink. Not today. Not again. But deep down, the words from yesterday still sat in her chest like a stone. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her agent. "People are talking about what happened yesterday. A few producers want to talk. Don't worry, it's good." Anna stared at the message. It didn't feel real. For so long, she had tried to hide parts of herself to fit in her voice, her background, her culture. But now, for the first time, someone had stood beside her without asking her to change. Somehow the world had noticed. Inside the studio, Keanu was already waiting. He was sipping coffee, dressed in his usual plain black, calm, as always. When he saw Anna, he smiled. Not the kind of smile you give just to be polite. It was warm, real, like he was truly glad to see her. "Morning," he said. "You're early," Anna replied, setting down her bag. "Habit," he said. "I like to be where the quiet happens before the noise begins." She laughed softly. "You always say strange things that make too much sense." Maybe he smiled. "Or maybe I just like quiet things." They walked together toward that set where a private rehearsal was scheduled. The director had called for it, not because of the accent incident, but because he wanted to feel the energy between characters before the full shoot began. "I think yesterday shook him a little," Anna whispered. "Sometimes," Keanu said, "shaking people is what helps them wake up." The rehearsal room was dimly lit, the space still half empty. Anna picked up her script, but her eyes weren't on the pages. She kept thinking about something Keanu had said the day before. Mean better. Those words rang in her mind like a bell. She hadn't told him yet, but they had stayed with her all night. She wanted to say thank you again, not for what he did, but for the way he did it. With stillness, with kindness, with quiet power. Before she could say anything, the door opened, and the director stepped in. Behind him walked 3 producers and a young woman with a headset and clipboard. Everyone looked serious. Anna's heart skipped. She stood a little straighter. The director spoke first. "Anna, Keanu, thank you for coming. This won't take long, just some updates." He motioned toward the producers. One of them, a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes but a soft voice, stepped forward. "We saw the footage from the table read yesterday," she said. "Not the scene, the moment after, when you didn't speak." And he just looked up at Keanu. That silence. That was the moment. We've seen hundreds of readings, but that was rare. Anna didn't know what to say. The producer continued, we were thinking about the final scene. Just body language. Just emotion. In your voice. Your real voice. We want to let it come through in earlier scenes, fully. No pressure to adjust anything. Your accent is not a distraction. It's a strength. Anna's lips parted, but nothing came out. He gave her the smallest nod, like he already knew. Like he had always known. After rehearsal, they walked out together into the parking lot. The sky was cloudy, but the air felt light. Anna turned to Keanu. They want my real voice, because it's the right voice, he said. How do you do it? She asked. He looked at her curious. How do you keep your peace in the middle of everything? She asked. When people whisper, when things go wrong, when people hurt others without thinking, you just stay calm. Keanu looked up at the clouds, because I've been through storms that were louder than words. And I learned if I let others shake me, I'll never be still long enough to hear what really matters. Anna nodded slowly. I want that. You already have it. He said. Later that day, Anna returned to her apartment. It was quiet like usual. She sat at her desk, pulled out her old notebook, the one she hadn't touched in months, and started writing. Not lines from a script, not a journal, but memories. The sound of her grandmother's voice, the smell of her hometown's streets. After the rain, the first time someone told her she would never be accepted in Hollywood, and the first time someone told her she didn't need to change, she wrote until her hands hurt. And when she finally looked up, the sun had gone down. Meanwhile, Keanu was walking through the city alone. He didn't often explain where he went. After shoots or rehearsals, but there was one place he visited sometimes, a small bookshop tucked between two larger buildings, run by a woman named May. May didn't ask questions. She just nodded when he walked in and pointed toward the back shelf where old poetry books were kept. Keanu picked one up. It was in Spanish. He smiled. May saw it and raised an eyebrow. You reading Spanish now? Learning, he said. Someone close to me. I want to understand their words, not just the translation. May smiled and handed him a worn copy. Then start with this one. It's soft and brave. Keanu nodded. Soft and brave, he repeated. Like her. The next few days were calm until a clip from the table read surfaced online. Someone had posted it without permission, but it spread like fire. The moment Keanu stood up, the silence. The words he spoke, comments poured in. Not just praise, but stories. People from all over the world shared how they had been mocked for their voice. How they had felt small for sounding different. How they had hidden parts of themselves just to be accepted. Anna read them one by one, tears slowly slipping down her cheeks. One comment stood out. I've never heard my voice on screen. Until now, thank you, Anna. Thank you for not hiding. Anna whispered to herself. I almost did. But someone reminded me not to. On set the next morning, the mood had changed. Crew members smiled a little longer. The director gave her space. People looked at her differently, not because she was a star, but because they saw something real now, something they had almost missed. Anna stood before the camera. The final scene was being tested. No dialogue, just her eyes, her breath. Ready? The director asked Dada. Anna nodded. The slate clicked. Silence, then movement. She stepped forward, eyes shining, hands trembling ever so slightly, and she delivered not a single word, but everything the crew watched without blinking. When the camera stopped, the room remained still, and then, one by one, they clapped. Not loud, not rushed. A slow, deep applause that meant they had felt something. Keanu stood at the back. He didn't clap, simply placed his hand over his heart. Anna saw it and smiled that night. Anna posted her own message online. She wrote, They told me to change my voice. I almost did. And truth needs no translation. The post went viral, but Anna didn't watch the numbers. She sat on her balcony, coffee in hand, listening to the city hum below. Keanu messaged her. You didn't just speak today. You sang, Anna replied. I'm still learning the song. Thank you for hearing it." And far away, a little girl in another country listened to Anna's interview, got tears in her eyes. "She sounds like me," the girl whispered to her mother, and just like that, the echo continued. The letters she never expected. Morning air was soft. It was full of golden light spilling through the curtains in Anna's apartment. Her phone buzzed again and again, but she ignored it at first. For the first time in a long time, she had slept without dreams, without fear. Just rest. When she finally picked up the phone, there were messages from her agent, her manager, someone she hadn't heard from in years, her drama teacher from Cuba. The last message read, "They all tried to dim your voice. Now the whole world is hearing it. I'm proud of you, Anna. Never forget where you came from, and never stop sounding like it." Anna sat down and covered her mouth with her hand. The tears came before she could stop them. Outside, Keanu stood, quietly by the catering truck on set. He wasn't working that day, but he'd come anyway, just to sit and watch the process. He liked being near the story. Even when he wasn't part of the scene, the producer walked by and nodded at him. "You always show up even when it's not your call time," the producer said. Keanu gave a small shrug. "Sometimes presence is louder than action. You know, you started something, right?" the producer asked. "You've seen the response?" Keanu nodded. It wasn't about going viral, it was about showing respect. "You did more than that," the producer said. "You gave her space to be who she is." Keanu looked out toward the soundstage. She just needed someone to remind her the space was already hers. When Anna arrived on set, there was a different kind of energy in the air. The makeup artist smiled wider. The assistant director brought her coffee without being asked. Even the lighting crew seemed to pause just to say hello. Anna wasn't sure what had changed till she stepped into her trailer and saw a small box sitting on her chair. A handwritten note was on top. It said, "From the crew, your voice gave us courage." Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, some typed, some written in messy pen. Each one was from someone on the set, the grip who always kept to himself, the wardrobe assistant who once said nothing but hi, the camera operator who barely looked up from his lens. One letter read, "I used to hide my real name because people joked about how it sounded. But yesterday, I changed my nameplate back. Because if you can speak with your voice, maybe I can." 2. Anna wiped her eyes again and again. She didn't know these people had been watching. She didn't know. They'd been waiting for someone to make it okay to be real. During a break in filming, Nan and Keanu sat on a bench just off set. She held the letters in her lap, still stunned. Double quotes. "Do you know what this feels like?" she asked. "Tell me," he said gently. "Like I opened a door in myself. I kept locked for years. And now people are walking through it, not to judge me, but to stand beside me." Keanu looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting. That's what happens when one person chooses truth. Others follow. Anna looked down. "What if I'm not always strong enough to be that person?" He leaned forward slightly. "Then lean on those who remember you are." Later that evening, a quiet event was held at a small theater downtown. Last-minute screening of an old indie film where Anna had played a small but powerful role years ago. Back when she was still learning English. It's back when her accent was thicker. Back when directors made her repeat lines again and again, not for emotion, but for pronunciation. But this time, the room was full of people who had come because of her voice. Keanu sat in the back row, wearing a simple hoodie, unnoticed by most. He watched the audience, saw them lean in when Anna spoke her lines, saw their faces change. After the film, a woman from the audience stood up during the Q&A. She said, "I moved here from El Salvador 7 years ago, and I've never felt safe speaking in front of people. But today, after hearing your story, I finally want to try." Anna blinked. The woman continued, "I want my daughter to hear her mother speak with pride. Thank you, Anna, for not hiding your voice and for reminding me not to hide mine." The room applauded softly at first, then louder. Anna didn't say anything right away. She just looked out at the woman and said gently, "Your voice is already beautiful, and your daughter already knows it." Backstage, Keanu waited. When Ana came out, he handed her a bottle of water and smiled. "You just changed someone's life," he said. Maybe Ana replied, "But I think she changed mine too." Days passed, and the energy around Ana only grew stronger. She was invited to interviews, panels, podcasts, but she chose her appearances carefully. "I want to speak when it matters," she told Keanu. "And you will," he said. One interview, however, made headlines. Ana was asked, live on air, "What would you say to the people who still think your accent makes you less American?" She looked straight into the camera and replied, "I'm not less anything. I'm just more of myself. That's enough." The clip went viral, but more importantly, it went global. Young girls in Vietnam, in Morocco, and Argentina all posted videos, speaking in their accents, reading lines, telling stories, sharing their voices, and many of them added a simple line: "Speak like Ana." And I saw them all. And every time she watched one, she whispered, "I hear you." But not everyone was happy. One studio executive, an older man with a long resume and little patience, spoke out in a closed-door meeting. "We can't build a whole campaign around her voice. People won't understand her in some markets." Fortunately for him, someone recorded it, and it leaked. The backlash was immediate. Fans, actors, and even journalists called him out. But Ana didn't respond with anger. She released a short statement. Instead, it read, "I will not make myself smaller so others feel more comfortable. I have stories to tell, and I will tell them in my own voice." Keanu saw the statement and called her. "That was powerful." He said, "I was nervous," she admitted. "Good," he replied. "It means your heart was in it." That same day, a surprising email landed in Ana's inbox. It was from the casting director of a major historical drama, one that required the lead role to speak 3 languages, including Spanish and English. The message was short. "We've watched your interviews. We want you to bring your voice, just as it is. The role is yours if you want it." Ana covered her mouth. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She just sat in silence, letting the tears fall again. Not because of the role, but because finally, someone wasn't asking her to change. They were asking her to be. Later that night, Keanu stopped by with takeout in hand. They sat on the floor, surrounded by scripts and tea. "So," he asked, "are you going to say yes?" "I already did," Ana smiled. "I just wanted to hear it out loud first. Then let's celebrate," he said. They raised their cups. "Of tea to what?" she asked. Keanu smiled. "2 voices that never gave up." Ana smiled back. "2 voices that never gave in." Outside the window, the city glowed, and inside, 2 friends sat quietly, not needing to say more. Because sometimes, silence speaks the loudest. Louder than applause. The sun was just rising when Ana stood on her balcony, a script in one hand and a mug of tea in the other. Birds moved between rooftops, and for once, the city sounded peaceful. She read her lines out loud, softly, letting the words stretch through the morning air. Her Spanish came easily, warm and full. Then came the English lines. She spoke slower, careful with rhythm, but not with shame. It's not anymore. Each sentence carried the strength of 100 moments behind it, moments she had once tried to forget. Now they made her voice fuller. Behind her, her phone buzzed. She ignored it at first. But when it kept buzzing, she finally looked. A new message from the director of the upcoming film. "Your voice in the read-through brought the room to a standstill. You didn't perform the character, you became her." Ana smiled, then closed her eyes. That afternoon, she stepped onto a new set. The project was historic. A true story about a woman who had risked everything to fight for truth. And now Ana would bring her to life. Keanu wasn't in the film, but he visited her trailer anyway, carrying a small brown bag. "I brought something," he said, handing it over. Inside was a necklace. Simple, delicate. It held a small charm shaped like an ear. Ana laughed. "What is this?" Reminder, Keanu said. "That the world needs to hear you. And that every time you speak, someone is listening." Her smile faded into something softer. You really believe that? He nodded. I've seen it. On the first day of shooting, Anna stood in front of a full cast and crew. The director gave a short speech, then turned to her. Ready? She nodded. They began with a quiet scene. Her character walking alone, whispering a letter to herself in Spanish. No lights. No effects. Just a close camera. Just truth. Anna spoke, not from memory, but from heart. And when she finished, the room was silent. No one clapped. They just looked at her like she had given them something precious. When the director finally spoke, we're not doing another take. Without doing another take. As the days passed, the story deepened. The role demanded more than acting. It asked her to remember. To go back to the girl who used to whisper English into a mirror at night, who used to flinch when someone laughed at her pronunciation, who once stayed silent just to avoid the shame of being different. And now she was speaking for all those girls in one scene. Her character stood in front of a crowd and said, "They tried to take my voice. But now, I give it freely, and I will not ask for permission." When Anna finished the line, the camera kept rolling because no one called cut. The tears weren't scripted, but they were real. Even the boom operator had to wipe his eyes. During a break, the costume designer walked over and sat beside her. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. Anna nodded. "When I moved here, I changed how I dressed, how I talked. I even stopped wearing the scarf my grandmother made for me. I was afraid of being too much from somewhere else." Anna said nothing, just listened. The woman smiled sadly. "But after watching you on set, I wore the scarf again, and someone asked about it. And I didn't lie this time. I told them exactly where it came from." Anna reached out and touched her hand gently. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "No," Anna said. "Thank you. You reminded me I'm not alone." The night before the film's teaser was released, Anna sat with Keanu at a quiet rooftop cafe. They watched the city lights shimmer below. "This movie, it's more than a film," she said. "It's like I'm finally answering every person who ever made me feel small." Keanu nodded. "And you're doing it without yelling?" Anna turned toward him. "Do you think people will keep listening?" Keanu smiled. "They never stopped. They were just waiting for you to speak louder than fear." When the teaser went live the next morning, no one expected the reaction. Anna's voice opened the clip. Not music. It's not action. Just her voice, soft and honest. "They told me I had to sound like them. But I already sounded like someone myself." It was less than 30 seconds long, but it spread like fire. People didn't just comment, they responded. They stitched the audio into their own videos, reading poems, sharing stories, telling truths they had hidden for years. Celebrities posted messages of support. Language teachers used it in classrooms. Parents shared it with their children. Even late-night hosts spoke about it, one said. On the de armas just reminded the world that the voice of a woman is not broken because it comes from somewhere else. It's powerful because it does. But there was one reaction that changed everything. A young girl from Spain posted a video. She sat in her bedroom, surrounded by books, nervously adjusting the camera. "Hi," she said. "My name is Carla. I've always been scared of speaking English at school because of my accent. People say I sound funny, but then I saw Anna's video, and I decided, maybe my voice is just fine. So today, I will read this poem in English with my voice, my real one." She read it. She trembled, but she finished. Anna watched the video over and over. Then she shared it and wrote one line. "Carla, your voice is not funny. It is beautiful. Never stop." That evening, Anna and Keanu took a walk by the ocean. She was quiet, watching the waves roll in and out. "They used to drown me, you know," she said. "The waves?" he asked. "The voices," she whispered. "All the ones telling me I wasn't enough. Not clear enough. Not American enough. Not anything enough." Keanu bent down and picked up a small stone, smooth and pale. But now, Anna looked at the water again. "Now, I think I'm finally swimming." He handed her the stone. "Keep this," he said. "When you forget how strong you are, hold it. Let it remind you You didn't let the waves take you. You became. One Anna closed her hand around the stone. Thank you, she said softly. You don't have to thank me, Keanu replied. I just stood beside you. You did the hard part. And that night, as Anna lay in bed, the wind whispering outside, her window, she held the stone in her hand and slept with peace. For once, not dreaming of silence, but of all the voices she had helped awaken. When the silence broke, Keanu stood in front of the mirror, the morning sun slipping in through the sheer curtains. Today wasn't just another day on set. Today she would speak on stage alone, in front of a room full of critics, actors, filmmakers, and press. It was the Global Voices Forum, a gathering meant to celebrate powerful performances and groundbreaking roles. But this year, they had chosen something different. They asked Anna not to perform a scene, not to read from a script, but to speak as herself. We want you to talk about your voice, the invitation had said. We want to know what it means to speak in a world that tells you to be quiet. Anna had stared at the email for hours when she first received it. She wasn't sure if she could do it. But now, standing in the mirror with her necklace from Keanu around her neck and the smooth stone he gave her tucked into her pocket, she was ready, or at least, she hoped she was. Keanu was already waiting backstage when she arrived. He stood near the curtain, sipping coffee and watching people shuffle about, setting up lights and sound checks. When Anna stepped in, he turned. His eyes scanned her face. You okay? A little scared, she admitted. Good, he said. She raised her eyebrows. You think fear is good? It means you care, he replied. You're about to speak from a real place. It always carries some fear, but that's also why it matters. The theater filled slowly. A gentle hum of voices rolled through the air. Some people sat casually, some leaned forward with notepads. Cameras were set up at the back. The stage was bare, except for a single microphone and a stool beside it, holding a glass of water. Anna waited behind the curtain, her fingers trembling slightly. Her speech wasn't written out word for word. She had notes, yes, but most of what she planned to say would come from her heart. You've done harder things, Keanu whispered beside her. When? Every day you chose to stay true to yourself. They called her name. The room clapped politely. She walked out, one step at a time. Trying not to let her nerves take over, she reached the microphone and looked out into the crowd. Faces, hundreds of them, waiting, watching. She took a breath, then another, and then she began. I used to think my voice was something to hide, she said. Not because it wasn't loud enough, but because it didn't sound like everyone else's. The room was silent. I was told I had to change how I spoke. It's that my accent made people miss things. That if I didn't speak perfectly, I wouldn't be taken seriously. She paused. Her hands were steady now. So for a while I tried. I practiced every night, repeated lines into mirrors. I even stopped speaking in Spanish, just to get better at sounding more American. But the more I tried to sound like someone else, the less I sounded like me. A few heads nodded in the front row. Then one day someone said something that changed everything. They told me I didn't need to change because the truth in my voice was already enough. They didn't shout, they didn't argue, they just said it, with quiet belief. She smiled gently, and suddenly I started believing it too. Her voice grew softer. After that, something strange happened. People began to hear me differently, not because my accent changed, but because I did. I stopped apologizing for where I came from. I stopped shrinking. A woman in the audience wiped her eyes. Anna continued. And now I hear from girls in places I've never even been. Girls who say, I speak like you. Girls who say, I'm not afraid anymore. And I think, maybe this voice, the one they once called a flaw, is actually a bridge. She stepped back from the mic, let the silence hold the room. To anyone who's ever felt like their voice wasn't enough, I want to say this. Your voice matters. Not when it's perfect, not when it fits in, but when it is honest, when it is yours. The room burst into applause. Not polite this time. Deep, honest. Loud. Keanu watched from the side. arms crossed, face still, but his eyes were full. After the speech, people rushed to meet Anna, actors she had admired since she was a teenager. Directors who once ignored her auditions, reporters with tear-streaked cheeks, even older women who said, "I wish someone like you existed when I was young." But amid the crowd, she looked for one face. She found him leaning against the back. Waldat Keanu. She walked over slowly. He didn't speak right away. He just handed her a folded note. She opened it and read. He didn't just speak. "You gave others permission to speak too?" She looked up at him, her heart full. "I didn't know I had this in me," she said. He smiled. "You always did." The world just needed to be quiet long enough to hear it. That night, Anna sat on her balcony again. The wind was gentle. Her tea was warm. She opened her notebook and began writing. Not a script, not a speech, just her thoughts. How fear had once silenced her. How kindness had helped her speak. How truth had given her wings. Days later, a school in Brazil reached out. They had watched her speech and wanted her to record a message for their students. Anna said yes immediately. When the camera turned on, she smiled softly and said, "To all the kids learning English, or learning to speak at all, speak with your heart. Your accent is not a mistake. It is a memory. And memories make stories beautiful." Keanu, watching the video later, paused at those words. "It is a memory," he repeated it to himself, and thought of all the people in the world carrying their own memories, tucked into their voices, waiting to be heard. A week later, a special award was announced. It wasn't for acting or box office numbers. It was called the Echo Award, given to someone whose voice had created waves in others. Anna was the first to receive it. The presenter stood on stage and said, "This award goes to someone who didn't try to speak louder than others. She simply spoke with truth. And in doing so, she awakened the courage in countless others." Anna walked up slowly. But before she said anything, she looked into the crowd and saw Keanu, his hand once again over his heart, and without thinking, she placed hers over hers too. She accepted the award with one line. "This isn't just for my voice, it's for every voice that's still waiting to be heard." And somewhere, across the world, another young girl pressed play on her phone and whispered to herself, "If she can speak." The voice that stayed a year had passed, not quickly, not quietly, but fully, full of change, full of growth, full of sound. Anna stood on the same stage where she had once shared her story with trembling hands and a hopeful heart. But this time, she wasn't speaking. This time she was sitting in the front row, watching another young actress walk up to the microphone, holding her own voice steady. This new actress was from Peru, nervous, glowing, but ready. And as she began her speech, Anna leaned back, a soft smile forming. She didn't need to speak anymore, not today. Today, she would listen. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is make space for others to speak. Earlier that morning, Anna had woken up in a different city. She was there for a new project, a quiet indie film shot deep in the mountains. No red carpets, no press tours, just story and soul. She wrapped a scarf around her shoulders, not for fashion, but for comfort. The same scarf her grandmother had once worn in Cuba. As she sipped her coffee on the cabin porch, she pulled out the stone Keanu had given her, smooth, cold, familiar. She still carried it, not because she needed it anymore, but because it reminded her of the girl she once was and the man who never let her forget her worth. They hadn't worked on the same film since that moment a year ago, but she and Keanu still talked often, sometimes short messages. Long late-night calls about life, loneliness, and the strange beauty of being seen. On the morning of the award show, she received a message from him. "Your voice changed the world quietly. The best voices always do," she replied. "Your silence made room for mine. Thank you." The ceremony was beautiful, not grand, not loud, just sincere. Every speaker was invited not to impress, but to tell the truth. Accents filled the room. Soft, rich, thick, gentle. No two voices sounded the same, and that was the point. Anna watched them all, and in their courage, she saw her own. After the event, someone approached her, a girl, maybe 16, small, with wide eyes and a notebook in her hand. "Hi," the girl said softly. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say thank you." Anna smiled. "You're not bothering me at all." The girl held out the notebook. "I write poems," she said, "but I never read them out loud. I'm scared people won't understand me." Anna looked at her kindly. "I understand." The girl asked, almost whispering, "Would you read this one?" Anna opened the notebook and read the poem. It was about growing up between languages. It's about feeling too much of one and not enough of the other. About feeling like your voice was always too loud or not loud enough. Anna's eyes filled. "This is beautiful," she said. "Do you really think so?" Anna handed the notebook back and leaned in. "I don't just think so," she whispered. "I feel it." The girl smiled with her whole heart. Outside, the night was cool and gentle. Keanu had flown in that evening. He hadn't told anyone. He just appeared, the way he always did, quietly, like breath. Anna saw him across the courtyard, near the trees. She walked over. "I knew you'd come," she said. "I had to," he replied. They sat on a bench beneath. The stars no words for a while, just stillness, until Keanu spoke. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked. Anna nodded. "We were reading lines. I was so scared." "You hit it well?" "No," she said with a laugh. "You just saw past it." Keanu looked at her. "I saw someone who had something to say. I'm glad the world finally heard it." Anna turned toward him, serious now. "Why did you stand up for me that day?" He took a breath. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people," he said. "I promised myself a long time ago. If I ever saw someone shrinking, I'd help them rise." She looked at him for a long time. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out the stone. "I still carry it," she said. "You don't need it anymore," he replied. "I know," she said softly. "But some things carry not because you're weak, but because they remind you how far you've come." Later, as they walked back toward the lights, Keanu paused. "You started something, Anna." "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the hall behind them, filled with laughter, accents, stories, and open hearts. "You made it okay for people to stop hiding." Anna shook her head gently. "No, we did." Months passed. Then seasons. Anna continued to act. To speak, to inspire, not with noise, but with honesty. Her films touched lives. Her interviews sparked conversations. Her voice, once doubted, once mocked, now lived in classrooms and family living rooms. In quiet corners of the world where someone, somewhere, was still afraid to speak, and they would hear her, and they would know they were not alone. Years later, a teacher in a small village asked her students to bring in someone who inspired them. One little girl brought in a video clip. Anna's voice played from the small speaker. "Your voice is not a mistake. It is your strength. It is your story. And someone out there needs to hear it." The class sat in silence. Then one girl raised her hand. "I want to write my story." The teacher smiled, then read it and read it out loud. Back in her home, Anna walked through her hallway. Photos lined the walls. Scripts rested on shelves. And in a small glass frame near the door sat a folded note in a stone. The note said, "You didn't just speak. You gave others permission to speak too." She ran her fingers over the frame and whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere in the world, someone else opened their mouth and dared to speak. Because of her, because of her voice. Because of what happened that day. Someone insulted Anna's accent, and Keanu's quiet reply made the world go silent. So they could finally hear her.